Okay. So thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you here with us. We're going to get right into it. We are being aware of your time, so we'll be done right at 3:45 today. Jake, you will have to change my slide. Thank you.
Got you.
I'm gonna give you one of these. Okay. So just a couple housekeeping things. If you would like Act 48 credits, make sure you're registered in Frontline. Attendance will be taken at the completion of the meeting, so make sure you stay for the entirety of it. And the session will be recorded, so it will be available on Padlet. So hopefully you've been able to access the Padlet and get some great resources. I know Jake and I have put some great things up there for you, so make sure you keep checking after each of our sessions just for more information and for the recordings. And then once you complete the survey today, you'll be entered in for this prize in December. A few of our objectives for today: procedures develop routines. And I guess I should have told you at the very beginning here. So we're talking about procedures and routines today, but we again made this a little bit spunkier, calling it bountiful habits in I guess, in light of the Thanksgiving season coming up here, routines that can make your classroom thrive. So we are talking about the procedures that can help develop routines within the classroom setting, how that structure and predictability is really important for our students to create a safe environment, and then what are those procedures that we can teach in order to lead to routines. We have some research in here for you. So without reading this in its entirety, I'm going to just reference snippets of it here. But really, this dependable system of rules and procedures provides structure for students and helps them to be engaged with instructional tasks. Teaching the rules and routines to students at the beginning of the year, having those reinforcing sessions throughout the year is really important in order to help students with their academic and task achievement. It's really important to clearly state expectations consistently. It leads to credibility and the teacher's authority. And then that very last one there, the educators use routines to set expectations, minimize disruptions to learning, teach behavior, and make the most of instructional time. If you can see in there, you might say, Amanda, some of these are really old, but you can really see through time that the importance of having that predictability, the importance of having those routines in place really leads to that strong management in the classroom when students know what to expect, and it just makes the academics flow a little bit more easily.
So why are we talking about developing a system for teaching these skills? Just due to family systems and dynamics, we can no longer assume that students should or do know the rules and expectations we have within the classroom settings or the school settings. And students need to learn appropriate behaviors without practice and modeling. We don't assume they come to school with all of these math skills. We take our time, we teach them addition, we teach them subtraction, and our routines, our systems that we have in place within our school setting is the same way. So we must assume that we need to teach these expectations and rules, and that students will need to practice these appropriate behaviors, and we'll have to reinforce them as well.
Fred Rogers is one of our favorites here, and he has some of the most wonderful quotes, but he says here, children feel far more comfortable and secure when things happen predictably, with routines, rituals, and traditions. Those traditions, big or small, create anchors of stability, especially in rough seas. You think about these students that are coming into us, we know, and we can think about those kids. You might say, oh, I have got one of those kids in my classroom, right? We always have those ones. And we think, man, if they would just, God, if I could just take them home, right? And we just think about what structure and what love and what that care can really bring to their lives is so, can really be so impactful for them. So really, we need to think about what are the ways we can prevent behaviors. We want to be preventative in the things that we're doing through the day. So really, we're saying 80% of what we do should be preventative, whereas 20% would be that intervention. Now stick with me, okay? Just stick with me, okay? I watched this training not long ago from Sasha Long. If you've ever heard of Sasha Long, she is actually the autism helper. She's phenomenal, and she gave this presentation, and I was thinking about this recently, and I said, oh my gosh, this would be so perfect to share with you when we're talking about the importance of predictability. So I want you to think about an alien abduction, right? We are all snatched up by these aliens and we are taken to this foreign land, okay? We are probably feeling quite anxious. We're unsure of what's going on. Our heart rate is probably increasing. We're unsure of what's happening.
We are stressed.
We're stressed, right, Jake? We're feeling it.
We are.
So when the aliens capture us, they take us to one of two places. The first one is going to be our green table room. Jake, you may have to, I can't click all my
I
things.
got
Give me
it.
3 clicks. Give me 3 clicks, Jake. All right. So in the green table room, we get Netflix whenever we want. We can have any beverage of your choice, water, pop, soda, be as creative as you like. Or you can have chocolate. Those things, they're in that room all the time. We can have it. Life is good. Or we can go to the red table room and they'll take us where we listen to piano music nonstop. We have to write essays, lots of papers about things, maybe things we like, but still things. And they give us celery to snack on. There's no dips. You don't get hummus or peanut butter. You can't make like your little ants on a log. You just get plain celery. So, but we know what we're getting. On the other hand, these aliens could then maybe take us to the yellow table or the yellow room table, which has, well, sometimes you get Netflix and sometimes you get piano music nonstop. Um, Sometimes they'll take you to the purple table room, and sometimes you get chocolate for snacks, and sometimes you just get celery. So you're not really sure what you're going to get on any given day if you go to the yellow table room or the purple table room. So if we're thinking about this, what would you choose? Would you choose, I'm going to go, and remember, you're captured by aliens, okay? So you have no familiarity with what's going on around you. You're feeling stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious. You could choose to go to that green table room where everything's the same every day. You know you're going to get Netflix and whatever drink you'd like and chocolate. You know those things are what you're going to get. Or you know if you're in the red table room that you're going to get piano music and writing papers and eating celery. But you know what you're going to get. On the other hand, if you have the yellow table room, sometimes you get Netflix and sometimes you get the piano music. In the purple table room, sometimes you get chocolate, sometimes you get celery. So what are you going to choose? We're in this unknown space. I think we're going to choose that predictability every time. We know exactly what to expect. Even if we're in the room with celery, we still know what we're going to get, right? Otherwise, if we're in that unpredictable space, and here's the thing, sometimes things are unpredictable, but if we can have those unpredictable things happen in the context of a safe and loving environment where we know we're cared for, it becomes a little bit different. But overall, the importance of that structure, having the same thing, knowing what to expect, can put us at ease, can also put our students at ease.
The perfect segue to planning to have a trauma-informed classroom. You can see on the right there, it's a typical development. At the bottom of our little triangle there, you see survival. They're not really concerned with survival. It's like the smallest part of the triangle there. And then it goes up to regulation, social, emotional, and cognition. Ready for school functions, ready to learn, we'll say. So let's
And
flip
we
that.
have those typical students, right, Jake, that are coming in, and we have those kids, and you can see them. They're coming in, and they're like, I like to think of this as like my kids, Jake, maybe your kids, and they're coming in, they're like, all right, Susie, I'm ready to learn all the things. And they sit in their chair and they do their morning work, and you're like, yes, Susie, I want everyone to be like Susie. And then we have Johnny, right? And Johnny's coming in, right, Jake?
Johnny's coming in.
Poor Johnny.
We always talk about these kids coming in with baggage and,
Mhm.
maybe it's their family dynamic or their family system. Survival is at the forefront because, just trauma they may experience. So that triangle literally flips on its head, and their first priority for those students is survival. And you see at the top of that is that cognition and ready to learn. So these students aren't really concerned with coming in and sitting in a desk with their hands folded and really crushing that foundations lesson for the day. So it's just kind of something to think about as we're setting up our rules and routines, procedures and routines within our classroom setting.
With that predictability, really, that consistency is taught in daily routines. And those are probably some things you have established already in your classroom, right? You maybe greet the students outside the door. You're like, hey, good morning. You start with a high five or a fist bump or whatever it is you do. You have your morning message. They have maybe a structure of what they're expected to do whenever they come in. All of their notes would go in a certain bin. There's maybe a classroom newsletter. There's a morning meeting. Those things are predictable. Those are part of your day that are just the kids know what to expect.
So the benefits of procedures and routines we sort of touched upon, but we just like to add some more information here. It gets rid of distractions, raises the likelihood that students can focus on learning. It saves a lot of time. It lessens the workload. There's no guesswork and there's less frustration. Some of the things we have to also like to talk about are executive functioning skills. You know, students are constantly working on our executive functioning skills. And if they know, like, okay, I'm going to get my book box, what exactly does that look like? So we'll set that procedure and we'll set that routine for, we'll walk at level 0, we'll get our book box, we'll pick it up, we'll walk it back to our seat, we'll take a seat, and we'll show the teacher ready hands. So those kids really are focusing on those executive functioning skills, and it's really driving home and really helping them develop those executive functioning skills with our rules and routines, and then of course our reinforcement afterwards.
Yep. And kind of with that, Jake, what you were saying too is, we have these students that come in, and we can't just assume that our student, and we may have said this in a previous meeting too, but we can't just assume that they're in the 3rd grade. They've been doing this since kindergarten. They should already know. But sometimes our rules and our procedures and routines, they differ from class to class. So I can't say, I know that Joey knows what to do because he's in the 3rd grade. I need to make sure that I'm teaching my expectations in the classroom so that Joey, and all the rest of the students know exactly what to expect. And we're going to get into kind of like what Jake was talking about too, the importance of that and some of those routines that we could have in the classroom, or maybe some things you might be like, oh, I really need to put that in place. But anyways, what are those procedures and routines? So we put those like step-by-step, I guess, activities or events in place in order to create a routine in our day. So we might have routines in the morning, like whenever you wake up, you probably check your phone or you turn off your alarm, and then maybe you do a workout, or you have breakfast, or you get your coffee, then you get in the shower, and then you brush your teeth. So you have this like routine put in place. And let me tell you, if I get my routine out of order, I'm not probably like walking out the door forgetting to brush my teeth because I didn't do it at the right time, right? Um, anyway, so some of those procedures that we might have in the classroom: lining up, walking in the hallway, sharpening pencils, attending an assembly, asking to use the restroom. So those procedures we put in place, those step-by-step activities we put in place to help develop those routines, will help the students meet the expectations.
We have, oh, sorry, good.
Are you sure? So we have so many routines built into our day. Just a question I just want you to put in the chat here. Are you noticing students struggling to carry out specific tasks in class? And you don't have to tell me like, yes, it's Joey and he's doing this every day, but like, yeah, I see some of this struggle, or like I'm pretty good with those things. So just put in the chat for us so we can see, maybe you are going bonkers over it. Sometimes we feel like, golly, I've said this so many times. Any struggles within your setting with students to carry out routines or procedures? Okay, so we have maybe one procedure, something that's maybe a bit challenging. Okay, you can
Amy,
keep going. Yep, if you see anything else, then you can, or if you think about something, you can let us know.
keep the
Yeah,
chat open. That can just be an opportunity for us, just to add
okay.
something to the Padlet, turning in homework responsibility for work.
Oh, okay. Yep, absolutely. So just some of that responsibility for sure. Absolutely. You can click the next one, Jake. If anything else comes up, I'll be monitoring the chat. Um, so let's think about the task. Let's think about all these things, and we're going to show you some of these things. So if we're thinking about some of these tasks that are occurring, within the classroom, and depending on what it is, okay, did I teach this specifically? Did I model this behavior? Did we practice it together? Did we reinforce it? And we're going to get into a very specific example that you could apply to other situations as well. So, and also making sure that simple, clear language is being used so that we're communicating those expectations. Less is more, my husband tells me.
So we start here with a classic non-example of our procedures and routines. Um, should we leave that up for a homework assignment, Amanda, or you think we should
Let's give it a go. We're gonna see. I'm hoping we have enough, like, I think maybe you call it bandwidth or something. Let's see if this works for us. If not, we'll give you a little chat. If it doesn't work, someone let me know in the chat.
I'll take care of her.
Thank you.
You know, kindergarten is like the ocean. You don't want to turn your back on it.
Oh, they're okay. Don't worry. Everything is under control. Oh.
We're losing sound, Jake, but that's okay. So we can see this. He turned his back. We know he said, that lady said, kindergarten is like the ocean. You don't want to turn your back on it. So we can still, even without the volume, we still have the visual of this. We can say very chaotic environment.
There we are.
So, okay. Maybe we can just pause it there, Jake, since
Got
I know
it,
we can't hear it. You get the picture. But we can see, I mean, a number of things going wrong in this picture, right? We can see those kids, one kid's being pulled along in a little cart. They're coloring all over the walls. I mean, there's like 50 kids in that class. I hope nobody has that many children in their class. I mean, that's a lot of kids. But if we think about this, really, a lack of structure, maybe there's no expectations, no groups, there's access to so many items and activities. It is pure chaos. At the end of this, which we weren't able to see here, but the teacher response is he becomes overwhelmed, his behavior escalates, and he ends up yelling, like really yelling. And for these kindergarten kids, you've got this big guy yelling at you. Their response is, we have tears, and they're upset, and they're then slumping down. So as a result of the teacher behavior, we're then seeing the students become upset as a result.
If you want to check out the end, it's one of my favorite clips we've had.
It is funny. It's an oldie but a goodie.
It is. So
Kindergarten
on the flip side of that, we have an example we would want to use within our classroom setting. I talked about getting those book bins, but this is an expected procedure for lining up at the door. So some of the things we're going to be telling our class, level 0, we use eye levels in some of our classroom settings. So level 0 would just be boop, hit the mute button. We're standing up. We're pushing our chair in, our hands and feet are to ourselves. We're walking to the door, and when we're maintaining that personal space bubble. A great book for that is Personal Space Camp. If you want to check that out on your once we finish here, we can maybe even add it to the Padlet. That'd be a good resource. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach those expectations. We're going to model. I taught phys ed for 15 years before coming to the IU. And one of the things I always used was peer modeling. And, you know, Susie, do you think you can show us one of the things that we are doing to line up at the door? Susie would like say level 0, and she would do it. Great, Susie. And then we use that peer modeling. I don't want to say peer pressure, but that peer modeling piece really reinforces those expected behaviors and then our procedures for lining up at the door. And we would practice and we would practice and we would practice almost to the point of overcorrection. And they're like, oh my goodness, Mr. Graham, if we practice lining up at the door one more time, that's sort of where we bring in our acting skills. Yes, everybody. We're at level 0 and standing up, hands to ourselves, walking to the door, maintaining space. Way to go! And that's just our social praise that we might use with in that setting. High fives, knuckle bumps, whatever the reinforcer for your class might be. And then the steps above, they become routine when we practice it, and then inconsistency expectation is maintained.
You do that, Jake. You are like so energetic. I don't know. I don't know. Jake's like on it. So what Jake was saying, to piggyback on that, we actually have this link in the Padlet. If you can see the little Padlet symbol up there on the top right corner, Jake had a good idea of sticking that in there so you see what information we actually have on the Padlet. But there are all of these different areas in which you could benefit from those procedures to help establish routines within your classroom. There are, I don't even know how many, there's what, 30, maybe 30 different examples
Dozens and
on there
dozens.
already ready for you. So if you're saying like, oh man, like this is something I'm really struggling with, or this is an area that my students, I'm like, I just don't know. These are already done. They're already in there. So just try building those in. Pick a thing. You know what I mean? If you have a couple things in your classroom, really think about like, what are the steps that I need to have in place in order to teach? Provide that modeling for the students, provide them opportunities to practice, and then reinforce. If you have like a ticket system, or like Jake said, maybe it's like that high five or the fist bump. It's amazing what like a stamp or a sticker, as far as those can go. I think we had a high schooler, like a high school survey, and they said they really liked getting smelly stickers. I mean, who knew? They revert back to their childhood. So it's the little things.
So we're talking about what happens when the classroom is highly structured and what is the class actually engaged in. So once it's highly structured, or we're increasing, attentiveness, willing to clean up the area, the friendly peer interactions, and task involvement is decreasing. Disruptive behavior to peers, off-task behavior, aggression, and impulsivity. So what are we saying in this slide is we're increasing the expected behaviors that we're wanting to see within our classroom and decreasing those disruptive behaviors.
Jake, this sounds great. I mean, sign me up, right? Who doesn't want more of that?
So we have some other preventative measures. We always want to be proactive versus reactive within our classroom setting. That's probably why you're here with us today. Thanks for joining. Preventative reminders, we call this pre-correction. We talked about that in our first PD. Before transitions or activities, we're going to remind the students of the expectations. You can call them on them, like that lineup example that I said. Like, who can name one of our expected behaviors for lining up at the door? Oh, yes, Dawn, what is that? And you would really reinforce that. And then maybe even once we hit on all five, have one person demonstrate all five. And it's kind of just scaffolding that expectation. Less likely to have behaviors, or they may be easier to correct. Effective commands, be direct to limit confusion. Provide directives rather than questions. If you give someone a question, Amanda, would you like to start on your math homework? What is Amanda going to say to us every single time? Amanda, would you like to start your math homework?
Do my math
Absolutely not. And the other thing I'd just like to talk about, talk about briefly for that is, if you're asking that question, it's like a directive and she says no, I'm like, too bad, Amanda, we're doing number 1 through 15. You're sort of just taking away that power of their no. You're taking away their ability to set boundaries and just sort of self-advocate for themselves. Active supervision is our next preventative measure. It's a low intensity strategy to help decrease disruptive behavior. You're monitoring around the classroom. It's easy to praise positive behavior or redirect behavior discreetly. We like to talk about visuals a lot. You could just, have a little Post-it note. I really like how you're doing it, how you're focusing on our ELA assignment, or even, let's remember our seat behavior and slip a little Post-it note. It's either way, it can be a positive or sort of like a redirection. And attention signals, one of my absolute favorites is establishing signals for gaining attention. Be sure to have their attention before providing those directions. We don't want to give a direction with some sort of interfering attention. So like, for example, since we know it's Thanksgiving and we know it's November, so it might be gobble, gobble, wobble, wobble. So we would just practice that, the same thing. All right, class, here's our new attention grabber. We're gonna do, when I say gobble, gobble, you're gonna echo back wobble, wobble. So let's
wobble.
practice.
Sorry.
All right, let's practice. Here we go. Gobble, gobble.
Wobble, wobble.
So then we reinforce it. I really liked your wobble, man, like wobble, wobble. So again, I know I probably had too much coffee today, but those are just some really easy things that we can do.
It's fun, Jake. It brings a lot of fun into the environment. We can have some fun whenever we're teaching these things too. Listen, we've got to keep it, I don't know, fresh, I guess, or we may be losing it too. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, make it fun.
And again, that's just going back to giving
Mhm.
directions while there's no competing distractions. You're not repeating your directions 5,000 times, even though we do sometimes, sometimes we put these things and they don't work, but it's also, you're not on repeat all day long.
Yeah, we did want to include those when Jake and I were talking about preparing this. There's so many great things that we could cover. And as we're talking about these preventative measures when we were talking about these preventative measures for our students, we wanted to make sure to just include a couple of those other things on there too, for you to just take away. And if you have questions about those, please let us know. Or if you need something else, we're really happy to help with those. But if we're taking a look at this, so the importance of developing a system for teaching social emotional behavioral skills. So we know how closely our behavior and academics are aligned here. Behaviors are prerequisites for academics. Procedures and routines create structure, and then repetition is the key to learning those new skills. We do know that if a student could be struggling academically, we could see those behaviors. On the other hand, if the student is demonstrating a lot of behaviors, they could then potentially be struggling with their academics because they're missing out on that content. So it's so important all the way around. And those things together could really be affecting that social emotional part of this as well. So for a child to learn something new, it needs to be repeated on average of
Just
dun,
take,
dun, dun,
just take a little gander. What do we think? Is it 1? Is it 12? Is it 195? No, it is
8.
actually 8.
8. And we're thinking this is our average learner, the typical learner. This is a student who isn't coming in with, with that trauma or with a learning disability. So there are lots of different things that could be impeding a student from sorry, I got distracted for a second. But for a child to learn something new, it needs to be repeated 8 times. See, I just said this, Jake. This is my life. 8 times. But anyways, those kids who are coming in, we know on average 8 times. All right, adults could be
more or
how many
less. What do we
times?
think?
Dun,
Let's
dun,
see
dun.
it.
25, probably because we get distracted with things like me just now. So adults, an average of 25 times. I like to think it's because we have so many other things stored in our brains. I mean, I don't know. Again, average adult 25 times. And then for a child to unlearn an old behavior and replace it with a new behavior, the new behavior needs to be repeated, oh boy, 28 times. Again, your average learner. So to unlearn and relearn something new 28 times. So if you feel like you're going to, I don't know, go a little crazy over repeating yourself, there is hope. Keep going, because it does take them some time. So your efforts are important, and you're doing a great job.
So we just have listed here some of the outcomes of structure and predictable routines: time management, reduced anxiety, and increased independence. We sort of talked about the increased independence as far as the executive functioning skills go. Reduced anxiety, we talked about our trauma kids. Predictable routines reduce student anxiety and create a sense of security and stability. Goes back to that alien example that Amanda was talking about. We're more comfortable or more okay or baseline when we are feeling secure and stable. So if something does switch, then more than likely we won't see this anxiety. So time management, if we have a routine to sharpen those pencils, we do it at the beginning of the day. We have a little bin for our sharpened pencils. Kids aren't, distracting and sharpening as we're talking about, or, adding 2-digit multiples. So, it doesn't interrupt us throughout the day. I guess what I'm getting at.
So if we take a look at this, this is actually something that we've used within our classroom management presentation that we provide. And really it's like a full day of kind of like what we've been doing, like in little snippets here. But this is part of that, and it provides some positive classroom behavioral supports for us. We do have something like this within the Padlet as well for you. But it's just a list of some of those things that we could go through to create those routines within the classroom setting.
And Amanda shared that. I was just like, oh my gosh, there's just some of the things, you just never think about. Like, what do we do when a visitor comes? How do we approach that? So really looking and this is just like Amanda said, a snippet of your day, like how many rules, routines, procedures we have within our school day. It's honestly what, hundreds probably.
So many, right? So many. Yep. And then, oh, that's it.
There we are.
All of our procedures and routines, all of those things are so good. But They are. They're so good. There's so many good things. And we have a lot of good things for you in the Padlet. To be mindful of your time, it is 3:45. I just put a link in the chat for you for the Padlet. So absolutely make sure to check that out. We had everything upload around 3:15 when we started. So you have all kinds of information in there. We will get this session linked in there as well under today's session area. And there is a Google Doc link as well for you to submit some information. And again, if you do have a question, we are really happy to, to answer that. But does anybody have a question right now that we could answer for you? Oh, thanks, Katie. So glad you're here today. Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. We're glad to be a support for you and answer any questions you may have. So thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.